Hello friends, today we're going to answer the question, are short-term rentals allowed in California? Are short-term rentals allowed in California? The simple answer would be yes. But if you're left with some of the vital information, you could actually be left out and put yourself in a challenging situation. So throughout this video, I want to break down some of the rules and regulations associated with short-term rentals in California and give you a sneak peek into some of the best areas I think are viable for short-term rentals. So California, it's the Golden State, and it's a place where people are always looking maybe to get away from everyday life to go vacation. It has beautiful national and state parks and cities that people vacation to every single year. But isn't California one of the more strict states when it comes to running a short-term rental business? Well, that's what we'll dive into in this video by first covering some of the basic regulations with short-term rentals in California. Next, I will cover some of the general guidelines associated with owning and operating short-term rentals in California. And finally, I'll share with you some of the areas that I think are best in California when it comes to owning and operating short-term rentals. If you're ready, let's go. First off, let's define what California says about short-term rentals. The state defines a short-term rental as this: a residential property or a portion of such property that is rented to an individual or a group for not more than 30 consecutive days. Pretty simple, pretty basic. The good thing about California is that definition is typically applied to most cities and counties. However, some localities may include language that applies further specifics, confining what can be considered a short-term rental even further. Some define short-term rentals and vacation rentals differently, with a few localities banning short-term rentals while allowing for vacation rentals. So you can see where it gets pretty confusing. So let's talk about short-term rental rules in California. Ironically, California is the home base for probably the largest and most known vacation rental or short-term rental software out there, company out there, Airbnb. It's based out of San Francisco. So talking about local regulations, each city and county has its own unique set of rules governing permits, licensing, zoning, rental limits, taxes, and even good neighbor policies. Researching and understanding specific areas are crucial when considering short-term rentals in California. There's the transient occupancy tax. Most California jurisdictions levy this tax anywhere between 6 to 14%, but platforms like Airbnb or Vrbo typically collect and remit this tax on your behalf. But understanding your local tax obligation is essential. So let's talk about host responsibilities really quick when it comes to short-term rentals in California. Hosts are responsible for complying with local tax regulation, which may include in remitting that transient occupancy tax and other applicable taxes. Registering with local tax authorities and filing regular reports is often required. Zoning laws. Zoning laws determine where short-term rentals are applicable and can legally operate. Some areas have blanket bans. Other areas have designated zones or specific limitations. Really quick, and I know this is kind of the stuff that's mundane but important to understand. Let's finish this up by talking about some general guidelines in the state of California when it comes to short-term rentals. So registration and fees. Most California cities require that short-term rental businesses register their properties accompanied by varying fees based upon the municipality, and each one's a little bit different. Let's talk about occupancy limits really quick. Short-term rentals are often required to be the permanent residence, with the definition varying from city to city. Primary residence criteria may involve residing at the rental for a certain period of time, ranging from 60 days to 9 months. Some cities have restrictions based on dwelling type, location, occupant number, and minimum stay length. So to further understand that dwelling type, there are restrictions on percentages of short-term rental units in multi-unit facilities, or limitations on certain accessory structures like ADUs, which a lot of people have. They have their home and they have an ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit. It might be a tiny home in the back of their home. I've seen a lot of people that have used that for a short-term rental. In some cities, there may be restrictions, but others welcome it. Obviously, the location depends on the zoning, and each city is a little bit different. Doing your due diligence to understand which zones allow short-term rentals and which ones don't is vital for your success in having a short-term rental in California. And California has almost a blanket policy. It might be different for some municipalities, but overall, they have a limit of 2 people per bedroom staying at the short-term rental. So if you've got a 6-bedroom home, the max can stay there is 12. If you've got a 2-bedroom home, the max can stay there is 4. And some places have a minimum stay length, meaning the certain amount of days have to meet a certain limit in order for it to be a short-term rental. The last 2 I'll touch on briefly is safety measures. Many times if you have a short-term rental, you got to have the emergency information posted. You got to have an emergency contact just in case case of issue resolution that needs to happen on your short-term rental. And obviously have posted building and safety codes. And the last thing that's pretty prevalent throughout California is the neighborly conduct rule. They want to maintain neighborhoods for the well-being of permanent residents. And that is dealing with noise, with parking and trash. So we've gone through all kind of the boring stuff, but it's vitally important, right? If you are going to get involved in this stuff, anything you do, any business you run, there's going to be some stuff that is vitally important that sometimes could be considered boring, but diving into that and making sure that you comply with the regulations is really important. Now let's get into some of the fun stuff. Let's talk about some areas that I like that I've done a little bit of research on. Now personally, I don't own a vacation rental or short-term rental in California, but I have a good friend of mine that owns multiple in California, and she's been really happy with the success that she has seen. And many years ago, I found an area in California that was kind of booming when it comes to short-term rentals. It was that Big Bear Lake area and Lake Arrowhead in that southern part of California, just east and a little bit north of LA. You know, looking back 3 to 4 years ago, I actually wish I would have pulled the trigger on some of those because they increased in value pretty significantly from 2001 until now. And I still like those areas. Matter of fact, my friend, one of the short-term rentals that she owns is at Lake Arrowhead. But interestingly enough, I don't know if you guys remember the snowstorm that happened. I think it was the winter of 2022, 2023. That whole area got dumped on. She showed pictures of her short-term rental at Lake Arrowhead, and it was completely covered in snow. They had a tunnel in just to get inside the home. So needless to say, that kind of weather shut down her short-term rental for a period of time in the winter, when typically it's a destination where people go. But that was just kind of a freak accident where there was so much snow that it buried numerous houses in the area. So here's some areas I like. I like Anaheim, California. Obviously, I think the destination there, you've got baseball games that are close, but ultimately the main destination is Disneyland. You got a lot of people traveling there. And once again, when people travel like myself, would rather stay in an Airbnb. So if you're fortunate to have one in Anaheim, check the local regulations and rules just to make sure that you're not missing anything. I also like South Lake Tahoe. My family and I stayed there many years ago, but what a beautiful area. I mean, it is just, Lake Tahoe is amazing. Part of it's in California, part of it's in Nevada, but South Lake Tahoe, that area around Tahoe would be a great place to have a vacation rental home. Now I know prices are sky high there. Making the numbers work might be challenging, but I love that area. Another area I was really impressed with was around the Joshua Tree National Forest. I've seen Airbnbs there that have done extremely well. Matter of fact, one of the few Airbnbs that I've ever seen that had a 99% or higher occupancy rate was the rabbit-themed home that is just outside Joshua Tree National Forest. Now, Joshua Tree has lots of visitors every single year, and sometimes you're able to find a home at a pretty good deal, but my guess is you'd have to put a significant amount of money into upgrade it or to make it look like something where people would want to stay. Sometimes even having a pool, a jacuzzi is really important for that area, but I do know it's an area that a lot of Airbnb hosts have done really well. And the last one that I'll let you guys in on that I'm looking at right now that not a lot of people are thinking about is an area in Southern California called Borrego Springs. Now, what is drawing people to Borrego Springs? Well, it's an outdoor enthusiast's paradise. A lot of people go there to camp, to go on hikes, stargazing. There's a lot of things to do in that area and is gaining more and more popularity. My friend just bought one in that neighborhood over there in Borrego Springs, and it's an area that I'm currently looking. So if you're looking for maybe a gem that hasn't quite gotten all the popularity of other areas of California, check out Borrego Springs. Now, these are things that I've seen in California with its challenges when it comes to short-term rentals. I'd be interested in what you've seen when it comes to short-term rentals in California. So please comment below. Let's engage in a dialogue. And as always, I've got a free gift for you. It's my short-term rental calculator. You put all the input in, revenue, the expenses, and it spits out to you whether it's a good deal or not. It's absolutely free, no strings attached. Just click on the link below, aaronsfreetraining.com. And just for coming by, that's my gift to you. And hey, thanks for stopping. Have an amazing day.